Yeah. Yes.
Good morning, Vidit.
Hi.
Good morning, ma'am.
Dot at 12 and Vidit is here. So I have a cantonment kid sitting next to me and I have a cantonment kid as an author. It's a very important day for us.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Uppal.
Good afternoon. You can please call me Vidit. You don't have to call me Mr.
Yeah. So it's like I would, welcome to the online session. And at the outset, I would like to thank you for being so kind and you accepted the invite with so much, with you were so humble. So I was talking to Sonia ma'am and I was appreciating that, such humility, and the ma'am was just quoting the background again and again, that, the Fauji background matters. That is what comes forward. So now I would hand over the mic to Jayesh and Harman. They would be initiating. Jayesh and Harman, over to you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vidit Uppal, sir, respected Principal Ma'am, Miss Ritukal, teachers, and my dear friends. With immense pleasure, we welcome you all to this online interaction with the remarkable author, Mr. Vidit Uppal. Warm welcome, sir.
Thank
Good
you so much.
afternoon, everyone. It is indeed an honor to have Vidit sir here with us today. I have got some interesting details about sir from his family and friends.
Wow, Herman, please share it with all of us.
Born in Mumbai to a Fauji father and a teacher mom, Vidit Uppal sir got to move to different places and meet people across the country. This made him adapt quickly to new circumstances. He was always curious to learn more and inquisitive about his surroundings. From childhood only, he was fond of storytelling and bedtime, and gradually developed a love for reading. He could spend hours reading and exploring new authors all through his teen years. Be it the thoughts of the author or the details of the scene, he easily connected, and this nuanced understanding of characters and stories clearly visible in his debut novel, A Stick in the Mud.
Thank you, Herman, for sharing the information. I also would like to share something.
Really, Jayesh? What is it?
An engineering consultant during the day, with its writes short stories and poetry during his spare time. His first book, A Stick in the Dirt, is a beautiful story about friendship, love, and loss. So, it is an honor to have you amongst us, and we, the students of DPS Jalandhar, are delighted with this opportunity of interacting with you.
I would now request Mr. Vidit Uppal sir to address the students who have been waiting eagerly to hear your stories and experiences.
Well, thank you so much, Jayesh and Arvind. That was a lovely and generous introduction. Right. So, at the outset, I would also like to just thank Ritu ma'am, Gitika ma'am, Sonia ma'am for this opportunity. And I think this is a great initiative you have in this school. I wish there was something like this when I was in school. So, it's a good learning opportunity for listeners and speakers alike. So to start off, like Jayesh and Harma mentioned, I'm a writer now, and my first novel was published last year. What I would like to do is just take you guys through the backdrop of not just how that particular book was published, but the entire process of me, becoming a writer. What were the challenges and problems I faced during all those years when I was trying to write, so that you yourself, if any of you want to write someday, maybe you can learn from that and understand that these are the sort of challenges you might experience. So, when I was very young, writing was never at the forefront of my mind, especially kids of our generation. Growing up in the 90s, someone asks you what you want to do when you grow up. Writing is not something that you would hear most often from children. The main thing would be you want to grow up and become doctors or engineers or lawyers, and so those were the usual career paths one had in mind, and that was true for me as well. I was not special. I also thought the same thing, that I would grow up, I would study, go to college, become an engineer, do something like that. But apart from that academic background, what was important for me in my everyday life was reading. Reading was always my first love, and even till this day, it remains the best thing I do for myself every day. Right. So as a child, I love to read different kinds of books. And for that, I'm thankful for my parents as well, because they were the ones who inculcated that, fondness for reading in me, because even as children, they used to read, and they were the ones who bought me my first book. And they never said no to me if I wanted to buy another book. So, when you're a child, you ask many things from your parents. I can have this, can I have that? And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. But for books, they never said no. So, that was a great thing. So that's how it started. Writing was never on my mind, but reading was the thing I loved. And as I grew up, when I was even older than you guys are right now, you guys are just in 6th or 8th standard. I was around, I think, in my 10th standard or 11th standard and around that time, I was starting to read, let's call it more serious literature. And when I was reading those kind of books, I thought, these books are so well written. The characters are so complex. The plots are so interesting. Can I write something? Can I write something which, if I read, I would enjoy it as much as the books that I'm currently reading? So it was more of a challenge to myself, that I want to be able to, do something that I already enjoy. So I enjoy reading. Can I write something that I'll also enjoy? So that was the first thought I had in my mind, and so I started writing. And I was around 16 years old. And for the first year, I must have written, let's say, around 20 different first chapters of 20 different novels. Right? It was absolutely anything. I was writing whatever came to my mind. There was no process to it. There was no particular idea, but I was just writing whatever I thought was interesting. So I would write a chapter, I would read it, and I would compare it with the books I'm reading and think that this is so bad. This is really bad. Then I would just delete all of it and start writing once again. So that was the entire process. But at that time, I was never very serious about writing. It was just more of a hobby that I was doing. And when you're 17 years old, 18 years old, you also have your board exams and entrance exams, which was still very important, because you have to give those exams, you have to do well, and then you get admission into your college of choice. So that was still the priority for me. Writing was just something I was doing out of interest. So I gave those exams. I went into college, but I did mechanical engineering, and it was during my years in college that writing again came to the forefront. Because once you go to college, you meet so many different people from all over the country, and they all have so many different interests. And because it's a very large and diverse crowd of people, you'll always find friends who have the same interests as you. And in colleges, you also have various societies set up. So in our college, we had the literary society, in which there were more than 100 people, and all of them would talk about books they're reading, if they like to write something, what is their experience with writing. So that is where I again discovered that, okay, writing, I really like doing this, and this is something that I would like to continue on and do more of in the future. So that became then a dual priority for me, not just my studies, which were again at that time also still fairly important, because I had to do well in college, because that's how you get a job, right? And, but at the same time, I knew that writing is something I want to have a serious, go at. So I started doing both. The novel that I had started while I was in school, I continued working on it, and I wrote for, I think, a couple of years. And by the time I was in my last year of college, it was done. The novel was finished. And at that moment, I thought as if I had achieved something extremely great, which later I found out wasn't the case. But at that point, I was just so happy with myself that, okay, I've finished a novel. This must be the biggest thing I've ever done. But once you finish writing a novel, that is when you discover that you've only done 50% of the job. The 50% remains, and that the other 50% is much harder than actually writing that novel. So what do you do when you finish a novel, right? You have to find people who would like it and who would be willing to publish it. So, you go online, you search for publishers in India, and there are so many. There are like 10, 15, 20, whatever. I emailed to all of them. I was still in college at this time. So I emailed to all the publishers. They asked for different sample chapters or bios and all of the information they need. You send that information to all of them. And then you wait. And then after I waited, there were only two kinds of responses I got. One was complete silence. So out of 20 publishers that I emailed to, 15 would not even respond. And you can wait for months and months, and there's months can turn into a year and they will not respond. Right? And the second kind of responses, which were quicker than those other silences, were straight out rejections, right? So there were either silences or rejections, and I thought that, okay, I failed, right? I wrote a novel, but nobody apparently likes it. Nobody wants to publish it. It's a clear failure. So that was a disappointment, right? And after that, it was a little tough for me to get back into writing again. Around that time, I was also finishing college. I got a job. I came back home. I started going to office every day. Coming back late in the evening. You have time, not a lot of time, but and that time I would either read again or maybe write a few poems or short stories, but not a lot of serious writing because the disappointment of not having my first novel do anything was still with me. And of course, when you're at home, when you have a job, that combination of comfort and laziness is a very deadly combination. So you're at home, everything is done for you. You go to work, you come back, you're earning money. There's nothing seems wrong in life. So there's that lack of motivation to try to do actually something else other than what is happening each and every day. That can be a little difficult. And also at that time, I had plans that I would go abroad, do an MBA, get a better job. That kind of things are also going on in my mind. That's why I gave my MBA exam. I did well in that. A couple of years down the line, I applied to various MBA colleges. I cleared the first round in all of them, right? So like the applications that I sent out, I cleared. I was called for interviews, and this is around in my mid-20s, and I'm not really writing at this point. Writing is behind me. It's in college when I used to write, and I failed in my first novel. Now I'm thinking purely of just my work, my career, higher education. So I go for all these MBA interviews, almost 7 to 8 interviews. And again, all of these interviews, I come back, and the result is, sorry, we cannot take you in our college. I have failed one more time. I failed at something else, but it's a failure nonetheless. But at the time, there was one interviewer who was kind enough to, schedule a feedback session. So I had a talk with him, and he said that, I liked your application. I liked your academic background. I liked your work background. Your essays were fine. But when we were interviewing you, I could easily see that you were not passionate about the fact that you wanted to come to our college and do that MBA. And then he used a particular line which I still remember. He said, "Do not be a bystander," which simply means that do not wait for just things to happen to you. Do not wait for the world to go by and you just sitting, standing by the side of the road and just looking at it and not actively taking part in it. So at that particular instant, it did not, hit me as to what exactly he was trying to say. But later on, I realized that he was right. I was being a bystander. MBA was not my passion. And I was going at it and I was not being successful because I was not putting my heart into it. So at that point, I had to make a very difficult decision. I had to go to my parents and I had to tell them that, look, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do an MBA. I want to focus on my writing. And that was a tough moment. It was a tough moment for me, but I'm sure it was a tougher moment for my parents who more than me had, dreams of me going abroad and doing, studying in some fancy college, getting a great job and earning a lot of money. And as much as would have been disappointed by my decision, to their credit, they never forced me to do anything I did not want to do. They were very supportive despite their disappointment. But they never forced me and said, no, this is not what you have to do. The plan is there. You go abroad, you study. They never did that. So for that, I will forever be grateful. Right? So now, having made this extremely tough and important decision, I knew that I had to take writing seriously. I could not be a bystander anymore. Right? So I started working on my second novel, and I wrote every day. That was the only way I knew I would get this done. I had to make a proper schedule. I would make an Excel sheet in which I would enter the number of words I've written every day. And I would keep a track of that. And every week I would see, okay, what is the progress? How much more do I have to write? How much longer till I finish this book? And I had to show a lot of discipline and hard work to get that done. Despite all of that, it took me 2 years to write my second book. Right? And when I finished my book, the second book, which is A Stick in the Dirt, that second novel I finished in the year 2017. End of 2017 is when I finished that novel. And once again, we had the hard part in front of us. You look for publishers, you look for people who like the book and would be willing to put it out in the market. So I did what I had to do. I emailed this time more than 20. I emailed almost 30, 40 publishers, each and any publisher I could find on the internet, irrespective of the fact whether they were from India or they were from abroad or they were from Nepal or Sri Lanka. I just emailed all of them. And as before, the two standard responses, silences and rejections. That is all I got for a very long time. I waited for 6 months, for a year and a half. And again, that was all that I had, silences and rejections. So once again, despite all of that hard work, I thought that I had failed for another time. I failed a third time. But somehow in 2019, and you can see the difference. So I finished writing the book in 2017, and now we're in 2019. In 2019, I get an email from one publisher whom I had emailed the book to about more than a year back. Imagine emailing someone, for a response and you get the response after a year. That was the kind of situation I was in. So the response came in 2019. They said, we like your book. Here is the contract. Would you like to publish with us? And that was in 2019, right? And so last year, it took a year for them to work out all the details. And that is when my book got published. And now I'm here today speaking to all of you guys about it. So a lot essentially has changed in the last year and a half. It has really been the most interesting period of my life. But if there are a couple of things I would want you guys to just take from this experience, it's that I failed so many times before I actually got this little bit of success at the end. And that is what will happen if you're good at something and if you like to do something, then you have to be prepared to handle those failures that will inevitably come. Right? Even if you succeed at anything, it will be preceded by a string of 3 to 4 failures which you have to be willing to withstand and not be extremely disappointed about. And be sure that you learn from those failures. And the other thing I would like to tell you is that another thing that I learned the hard way, that you might be good at something or you might like doing any particular thing, but no matter how talented you are or how much of a genius you are in that particular field, if you don't actually be very dedicated and work hard at it, your talent will only get you like 10 to 20% of the way. The rest of the time, you just have to be extremely methodical about what you're trying to achieve, and you work extremely hard at it. That is the only way you're gonna get something done. So that was in a nutshell my journey, and from when I was a young child to how I was in college to how I finally got this book published. I hope it was of some value to you, and I didn't bore the hell out of you guys. But thanks a lot for listening to me. I had a great time, and yeah, thank you so much.
So, thank you so much for sharing such wonderful thoughts with all of us.
Sir, the students have a lot of questions to ask you. I would request Jayesh to call out the name of the students with the questions.
Let us begin with Afia.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir,
Good
I
afternoon.
used to read a lot. I wanted to know, do you read? Is reading important for a writer?
Do I read? Absolutely. I mean, reading is such a pleasurable activity. Reading is pure pleasure, right? So, in fact, writing is a combination of pleasure and pain, and sometimes it's just a lot of pain. So, yeah, I absolutely read. And with respect to whether reading is essential for a writer, it's not only essential, it's a prerequisite. Right? So, imagine if so let's say you want to do anything, you don't necessarily want to be a writer. For any profession, if you want to do something, you have to do the necessary education and the training before it. Reading is that training and education, writing. The only difference being other trainings and educations last for a couple of years, reading will last you your whole life. Right? So it is a continuous education with respect to writing, and you absolutely must read if you want to write. Well, if you want to write well, there's no other way around.
Thank you, sir. I will continue my reading.
Next, we have Nehal.
Good afternoon, Vidit sir.
Sir, when did you realize that you want to be a writer?
Well, when did I realize? So I wouldn't say there was a particular moment when I realized that I wanted to be a writer. It had to be sometime in college, because I was meeting so many different people who had similar interests, and we would meet maybe once a week, and we would discuss about the books we were reading and about anything we were trying to write. We also had various competitions in colleges, short stories, poetry, all those kind of competitions were going on, and I would take part in them. So yeah, that was around the time when I started, really developing a love for the craft of writing. And it was around that time that I felt that if not like a full-time professional writer, it was something that I really wanted to, spend a lot of time in and give it a good go. So around that time when I was in college.
Thank you, sir.
Now it's Saina's turn.
Vidit sir, I'm curious to know what is your writing process? Can you please share it with us?
Yeah, in fact, I'll share two processes with you. One that I used to follow and I would not recommend, and one that I follow now, which works much better. Right? So the process that I used to follow was, you'd be doing anything, you'd be essentially waiting for inspiration to strike you from the sky, and then you would open your, laptop, you would open a Word document and try to write something as long as that inspiration would last, and then you would get bored, you would switch it off and go back and do something else. Right? That was the process I used to follow, and sometimes I still slip into that process, which I try to stop myself from doing so. The other process that I follow, which is the process that led me to the second problem, is that no matter how inspired or uninspired you're feeling, no matter if you are comfortable or not comfortable, whether you're in the mood or you're not in the mood, you sit every day and you write. Right? Like you have a time for things to be every day. You eat at a particular time, you go to school at a particular time, you maybe go outside and play at a particular time. Well, then you sit down and you write. There is no other way of doing this. Right? In fact, if you wait for inspiration to write, you will keep waiting your entire life. So that's the only process I would recommend is that you treat it like a job. You go at it, you punch in your time, and you get out. And it doesn't matter if what if you're writing, it's not nice. You can always improve it later, right? So when you're writing something for the first time, the important thing is just to get it done. Creativity comes when you're doing the second draft. First draft, you have to be like a proper workman.
Thank you very much, sir.
Now we have Ananya. Sir, you write short stories also. How do you get ideas for stories? When I start writing a story, I always get stuck.
Do get ideas for stories. Well, first off, getting stuck is absolutely fine. Don't be worried if you're getting stuck. Getting stuck is half the job, right? So don't worry about that. With respect to how does one get ideas for stories? Well, there's no fixed answer for that. See, stories come out of a combination of your experience and your imagination. And mostly it's your experiences that feed into your imagination, and then you get that final product. So, how do you get more experiences, right? Experiences can be anything. The people you talk to every day, that's part of your experience, right? You talk to your mom and dad, you talk to your friends, maybe to your neighbors, you're in touch with your teachers. All of these people are potential characters and potential stories that you can develop. Right? Also, where you stay, in the town that you stay, sometime maybe once a year you go for a vacation. So you go to a different place, you meet different people, experience different cultures. Maybe they eat different kind of foods. Maybe they speak in a different way. Maybe they speak a different language. Maybe they celebrate different festivals. So again, these are all experiences that you can learn from, and all experiences that can then find a way, channel themselves to your imagination, from which a story can emerge. So as a writer or as a potential writer, what the only thing you can do is just be curious. Be curious about things that are happening in your surroundings. be curious about the people you're living with. Ask them questions about their lives, about their experiences, and just be more attuned to the world around you, and ideas come automatically once you're curious enough, and just explore each avenue of your surroundings.
Thank you, sir.
The next question is by Avni.
Afternoon, sir.
Right.
Vidit, sir, when you were in school, did you write then also, or did you have some other interests and hobbies?
I'm afraid I was a very boring child when I was in school. I had no hobbies or interests apart from reading and maybe watching a bit of television. I don't think that's a hobby. So writing, no, I did not do a lot of writing when I was in school. Only when I was much older, when I was around 17 or 18, in my final year of school is when I started to write a bit. That wasn't something that I did a lot when I was in school. My only hobby was reading, and yeah, that was the primary hobby. Nothing else, I'm afraid.
Thank you, sir.
And now it's Trisha's turn.
Good afternoon, Vidit, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I always have one character as my favorite in the book I love. So I was wondering, do writers also have favorite characters in their books? Who is your favorite character in A Stick in the Dirt, and why is it so?
But I can't speak for all writers whether they have favorite characters or not. Do I have a favorite character in my book? It's tough to say, but if I had to pick one, I would pick Vidya, because she's the backbone of the book essentially. She's an extremely strong-willed, independent, sort of rebellious character that holds the book. Right? And she's the one who supports Saurabh when everyone else is turning against him. She stands by him and is the only one who believes in his story. So I would say if I had to pick one, it would be Vidya. But yeah, I like all of my characters.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for answering each question so patiently.
Bolo.
Yeah, thank you. Like it was lovely with it. It was lovely to hear, and you have answered all the questions with so much patience. I just would love to. I would just love to have you in the school also someday. I hope these this situation gets better and this COVID we are fighting. Like as teachers, we try and provide all the opportunities to the students to the virtual platform, but the physical, the charm which the school has, that is we cannot compensate there. So now I would request Asmita to say her part.
I am sure that my friends are enthralled like me after interacting with you today. We are indeed grateful to you, sir, for sharing with us so many interesting stories. We wish that you interact with us again and motivate us with the snippets and experience. Thank you once again.
Well, thank you so much. It was a great experience speaking to all of you young students, all clearly very enthusiastic about reading and writing. So it was really nice to hear from you guys. Thank you.
With it, ours is a reading school, and so many of our children pick up to just take to reading like fish to water, because we begin from a very, very early, like you began very early reading. So these are the children who, despite now on their break time, post PTM, post result, these are the keen children who still wanted to meet the author and go to the natural transaction, of now becoming a writer, that they had something, in you. And otherwise, when you look at the writer, they all appear to be distant dreams, meeting a writer. You was like somebody next door meeting, I think the children felt like this, right? An elder brother or a neighbor, someone wasn't it so? Trisha, Ananya, Avni, I can see Asmita, Sarah all nodding, so these children were very keen, and you spoke on so many things so practically and so nice. And as Kitika said, we look forward to the day when you could come and visit us to our school. Thank you so much, Vidit.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so
On
much.
your weekend day, sparing the time and being
No,
here.
not at all. It was so much fun.
Thank you
A
so
lot
much.
of fun. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank
Sonia
you.
ma'am, if you'll permit, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, please, Reena ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
Hello, hi. Vidit, I would like to ask you if, if I may, was your first book a biographical foray?
No, it wasn't a biography. First book,
No.
I would take that as the book that I just published. So it wasn't biographical, but see, one does find oneself in the characters one develops. So there's always a little bit of, not just me, even the people I know. So maybe a little bit of my parents, a little bit of my friends
Yeah.
who find their way into the characters that come out. So
That's what
it
I'm
wasn't
saying.
biography.
The first book is generally something that, comes out from your own experiences. Right?
Right. So I wouldn't say it came from experiences, but maybe certain, because the story was totally different. It was nothing to do with what I had experienced in my life. But yeah, the characters and the traits they had, I did take a little bit of that from myself and the people I know. So that is.
And is Vidya also inspired from real life?
No, I wouldn't say Vidya is inspired from real life. I did have a friend in college who had that kind of, steadfast and sort of determined makeup. So I did take a bit of that from her. But no one from. I wouldn't do that to anyone.
I would like to compliment you while you were speaking about your writing process. I was reminded of this writing masterclass that I attended recently. This author, I'm forgetting his name, who's written more than 100 books already.
Wow.
And he was talking about maintaining this Excel sheet and how he sits down and has a particular workplace.
Yeah.
So good to hear that from a writer who's so new and so successful so soon. Great.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck to you and many more books to your name in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And our children would sure be reading it with it. We'll all be.
I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, we'll all be reading and learning from. Any other question? Anyone else, please?
No. They're all.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Vidit. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.